Welcome back, viewers at home. You're certainly joining us for a very interesting conversation that I believe we all should really, pay much attention to. And I think it's really speaking to the public at large to encourage them to become donors. Donors of what? Tonight I am joined by Ronald Abviji, the wellness expert, award-winning at that, to give us more insight on leukemia awareness and, most importantly, the importance of raising, or rather encouraging more people to become, donors of, it's either bone marrow or stem cell donation. Now, to find out more and understanding them better, I am joined by Ronald Abviji himself. Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah so much for joining us.
Walaikum salam, and always good to be with you.
Always a pleasure. Now, before we get to understanding the process and the critical role, the idea of, donation plays in the lives of those who need the donations in question, I think it's best for us to just, get started with a clip from Dr. Philippa, who is going to just speak more on leukemia and just explain what it is. But for viewers at home, let's take a listen.
Well, leukemia is a bone marrow cancer. The actual cancerous cell is the stem cell inside the bone marrow. So that's the sort of mother cell that makes all of the blood. And it undergoes a cancerous change and then grows out of control. So essentially everything that flows from leukemia comes from the bone marrow being overwhelmed by this cancerous cell and the normal cells not being able to be produced. So essentially the bone marrow fails and the blood cell count drops. Bone marrow is, in a normal individual, it's inside the long bones of the body. In a baby, it's in everywhere. Then as you grow older, it sort of retracts into the center of the body. So it's in the pelvis, it's in the spine, and the long bones. And that's where blood is made. So that's red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and immune cells. Patients with leukemia often end up in a scenario where they have bone marrow failure, and therefore they can't make blood and their immune system is compromised.
That was Dr. Philippa sharing in on what is leukemia and everything around leukemia itself. But Ronald, to you now, please help us understand, the process of donating bone marrow as well as stem cell, and the role that these, I don't know what to call them, what's the term to collectively call bone marrow and stem cell, if there is any, and how these play a critical role in assisting someone who is being treated for leukemia, if not other blood, disorders that they may be faced with.
Okay, so blood diseases like leukemia is a type of blood cancer, and we know that it's impacted on the blood. When you look at bone marrow and stem cells are found in the bone marrow, and stem cells, for lack of a better phrase, are the building blocks because they have the ability to regenerate, to customize their function and ability within the blood, and they form the components of blood. So your different types of blood cells. So you get white blood cells, leukocytes.
Yeah.
You get your red blood cells, erythrocytes are the two main ones, and of course a few other types. But what it does is it begins to form that. So that is one of the ways that we're looking at stem cells to assist and help those that do have either sickle cell anemia or leukemia or any other type of blood disease that stem cells can help them. If it's a recipient that is successful and matches, it can really help them combat that particular disease. That's what stem cells are. Now, you find them in bone marrow.
Okay.
You saw that picture in the video where you have
Yes.
the blue? That's the bone marrow. For those that are wondering, but what is it? Is it just like air pockets? Well, if we look at animal bone marrow, you and I spoke about it earlier, that jelly-like substance once you roast those bones, that's the bone marrow where the stem cells get formed. But how do you find these stem cells? How do you then, of course, get donors in play? And how do you then extract the stem cell? I think that's the key question. Old school thinking, and it still happens, is many people think, hi, wena, they're going to drill into my bone and they're going to suction some of this out. That still does happen. That's surgical bone marrow, the donor matching and, of course, retrieval. And what that means is that you will go under anesthetic. You will be under a surgical procedure for about an hour or two, and they do go into the back of the pelvic bone. pelvic bone in the pelvis area,
Yeah.
and they drill in and they remove some of that bone marrow. You might stay overnight, but it's not as intrusive as what that facial expression of yours shows. Pity the camera didn't catch that one. But what is more common now is peripheral blood stem cell donation.
Okay.
So what you do is they give you some medication to enhance the stem cell production, and peripheral blood meaning that it's throughout the body, it's flowing through the body. And what they then do is the medication boosts the stem cell production in your blood. And then a few days later you go, and then a catheter goes in and they're starting to, withdraw the blood. And then as the blood gets withdrawn, they separate the stem cells. That's what technology has now allowed us to do. And then the blood goes back into you, but the stem cells are then harvested for potential donation. And then the third mechanism is more for newborn babies. It's called umbilical blood stem cell donation. Not always 100% match, but a lot of mothers or parents now do this, and they freeze it just in case their child goes through any one of a multitude of diseases that stem cells are needed for, and they could be a very possible match.
Speak about being proactive. But, as you were explaining the process and, of attaining those bone marrows and stem cells like that, I want to find out what are some of the effects on the person donating and the patient themselves, because you find that sometimes it wasn't a success and somebody succumbs to whatever blood disorder that they have. Can you just paint a picture, like what happens?
Sometimes it's a matter of, like a car. If you've got a car that's got unleaded or uses petrol, you can't put in diesel.
Yeah.
Similar process if it doesn't match. Because when you look at things like your DNA is made up of a multitude of strands, and your DNA makes up every single molecule in your body. It determines from your eye color to your shoe size to all of those things, including your blood, so inside and outside of the body. And when you're looking at matching, the body identifies things that don't match, so viruses to blood transfusions to different substances in the body that become toxic, and the body builds up resistance and attacks it, which means it's not a match. So we're trying to get as much as possible more donors to become available and to go out there and donate, especially the Black African population. Because do you know that in South Africa, only 0.04% of the population are stem cell donors, and of that 0.04, less than 10% are Black African donors. And on the other hand is I spoke to someone earlier, very dear to me, and they said to me that, but the most common blood type in Black Africans and South Africans in particular is O blood, right? Which means you should be okay. But if you look at the population size, it is not as okay as what many people think it is. So we need to get more people to donate, because the more we get to donate, the higher chances of matching to a donor, which means your body will not reject it, your body will accept it, and it will do what it needs to do to regenerate, replenish, and of course, assist in managing and treating those diseases.
And later on, I'm going to ask you some misconceptions, and I would like for you to delve on probably what are some of, if there are any, that is restricting a lot of, Black people from coming forward to being donors. And whilst we're at that, can you tell us a bit on how viewers at home, myself included, can actually be donors of, bone marrow, if not stem cell itself?
So when are you going to become a donor? Let me ask that question.
Let's get to the how.
So what you do is this, is you need to go to the SABMR, South African Bone Marrow Registry website. You can log yourself as a donor. They then send you a swab kit. The swab kit is on the inside of your cheek, and of course they have a look at, are you eligible to be on the registry? Because they do have some precautions. You've got to be between 16 and 45. You shouldn't have any blood diseases or predisposition to them. You need to be of decent weight, aka you can't be umstutla. You know what I'm saying, with umkaba. So we're looking at weight because it's a risk of other diseases that you may have and metabolic issues. And then, of course, you need to be breathing, right? We don't harvest blood or stem cells from people that have passed on. And even though there are those types of donors, when you pass on, people donate organs, skin, corneas, etc. We don't get donation from those kinds of donors. Because, by the way, one person that donates organs can save up to 7 lives, just saying. But that is why we look at stem cell donation with someone that's breathing within those parameters.
Already as you're mentioning, the idea of organ donors, in Black culture, it's not believed that you must be buried while parts of you are missing. Like, that's like a no-no. So I guess that's the first thing that has people like, it's okay. But I think now it brings me back to the most curious part of this whole conversation is some of the misconceptions and fears around just donating in that sense. And I think I'm hoping you will touch base with regards to, the black demographic as to why they themselves are just such a small percentage when it comes to being donors.
Well, number one is definitely education. We cannot negate the power of educating. And again, whether you're black, white, Chinese, Indian, Japanese, makes no difference. Is that if something doesn't impact you, you're kind of okay with it being there, not knowing. Ignorance becomes bliss until you or a family member is impacted by something. I mean, COVID. I didn't get COVID that I know of, but was I aware? Yes, I was. But other people that didn't, they were like, I'm okay. But those that did were like, oh my goodness, this thing is life-threatening. My life is changing. I'm going to now start exercising, eating healthy, coughing into my elbows, washing my hands with soap. Guess what happened post-COVID? Everything of that's down the toilet. Excuse the pun. Right? Because those behaviors are not relevant.
Yeah.
So one is education is important and contextual relevance. That leads me into culture. And you hit the nail on the head. That culturally we believe, as a lot of black South Africans or black Africans, that I need to be buried as is. One is it's linked to ancestry and, with that belief. Second thing is it's linked into, in Islam and Arabic, what they call jadoo. We call it, dealing with the sangomas and those kinds of nuances. The African traditional medicine, which is a very prominent thing. And it's not a bad thing in the context if you're focusing on the herbal medication, but it's a belief that we have as growing up on the soil of Africa. So culturally, it's a big thing. Thirdly, is pain.
Yes,
People think,
drilling.
Ronald, surgery, drilling, how long is that needle? Where's that needle going? How much are you taking? Will I be okay afterwards? And now with the peripheral blood stem cell donation, it's a lot easier. It's almost like donating blood, right? So it's a lot easier as we look at becoming a stem cell donor. But those are some of the common things that we then look at. And finally, it really is about, we don't know. We don't know if we might be impacted by a blood disorder at some point in our lives.
Oh.
And then the doctor tells you, we need to find a stem cell donor. And you go onto a waiting list in the registry. And if there's no donors or no people donating, it's like a lottery draw. So again, it's a fear of not knowing, but it's the belief and holding on to ignorance. If I get there, I will deal with it. But what if you don't have to wait till you get there and then deal with it? If someone is just donating and going onto this registry, that if you do suffer with some sort of blood disorder, guess what? We know who to match you with now to get you the help you need now to make that a blood donor and stem cell donor successful.
And with that, is there a support system in place for the donors who are going through this process, and what cost implications are on the donor themselves? Because we know that this has a cost. Is the cost paid by the institution itself or the donor as well?
Well, when you look at the SA BMR, Bone Marrow Registry, they're very close with the South African National Blood Service.
Okay.
So if you can donate blood, it doesn't cost you a cent to donate blood, right? The equipment, the machines, they are funded as NPOs and NGOs, and in that process, it then goes into that ecosystem. Support besides the fact of, is it going to cost you money to donate? No. They even send you swabs for free to test if you are going to be a recipient to someone immediately or later on. But counseling and support is critical, especially when you look at debunking some of the myths and addressing the cultural beliefs. Because besides just what I believe culturally, it's about what do people around me believe. And am I going to be judged, questioned, told that the Kolosh is coming for me and I must go burn in Pepu or Roba? That's what's going to be told. So are you supported mentally and emotionally for that? Because chances are, South Africa is known as pointing fingers. Stigma is very rife. From HIV to flus and colds to COVID to being overweight to those kinds of nuances. We judge as a society. And that is something that emotional and mental support becomes critical to build a baseline, to make sure that your well-being is okay. And that's what is offered as well.
And now this makes me ask you to kindly discuss the impact of diversity in the bone marrow donor pool and the importance of really increasing the representation of underrepresented groups.
Well, I mean, we have to. I mean, we spoke about it earlier. The stats are scary. So if you look at the donation pool, 0.04% of our population, 6.65 million people in South Africa, 1% of that is what? right? 10% is 6.5 million, 650,000 is 1%, 0.04 of that is 290,000 people are only on that donation list. And of that 290,000 people, less than 29,000 are black South Africans. So what are the chances of them helping and supporting? And they banty a number around that a blood disease or disorder will match of a recipient to donor is a 1 in 100,000 chance.
Ronald, thank you for taking us out of our fears and, you know, giving us information that will really base our decision in terms of, you know, us becoming donors. Because I think you can't base a decision with no information or just, you know, misconception, because then it's a thing of we stay away. But thank you so much for giving us insight and clarity around, you know, the processes of bone marrow donations and, you know, just us understanding leukemia. Jazakallah so much for joining us.
Afwan, always a pleasure.
Viewers at home, tonight what we're taking away is that there is support system for donors. Donations is really not that difficult, but also there's technology, so you don't expect to be drilled. But for now, hopefully this information was insightful and it's going to encourage each and every one of us to really register to become donors in assisting those who need our bone marrow, if not stem cells. But for now, let's head over to a net break. We'll see you just after this.